Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
This episode is brought to you by the all-new and very exciting Super Learner Academy. Now, Super Learner Academy is the home of my premium level content and masterclasses from my course on accelerated learning, speed reading, and memory, all the way to my course on productivity. Now, in these masterclasses, I go into the gritty detail that I just can't go into on the podcast or in the books or in the other online courses. I offer the worksheets and the homework and the types of individualized attention that can only happen in my own platform where I control the learning experience. So if you want to learn faster, if you want to remember more, if you want to read faster, and you want to be able to do this all with a cohesive 10-week program that's going to take you from wherever you are today all the way to certifiable super learner status, I want you to check out the exclusive discount that we're offering for podcast listeners only at jle.vi/learn. That's jle.vi/learn. Greetings, super friends, and welcome back to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. You guys, before we get started, I want to read you guys an awesome review that we got from Interview Valet CF. I wonder what CF stands for. In the United States of America. The title is Inspires Me to Be My Superhuman Self. Quote, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Jonathan's show, especially Eric the Trainer. Thank you for having guests on who remind us how to step into our extraordinary selves and wow the world by what we truly can offer and become. I'm excited to listen to more. Thank you so much for that incredible review. And if you're out there and haven't left a review yet, please do, because it totally brightens my day. On to today's guest, you guys. We are joined today by David Karr, co-founder and Chief Brand Cebador for Guayaki. You might recognize the name Guayaki for those bright yellow packages of teas or beverages called Yerba Mate in supermarkets everywhere. And if you've been a fan of the show for a while, you probably know a bit about Yerba Mate, or you've heard me recommend it for its powerful nootropics power. Well, today I actually just wanted to interview someone who's devoted a good part of his life to sharing this plant with the world. So no sponsorship here, nothing, just really an exploration of a plant medicine that I think is really, really powerful and really, really beneficial, and something that I want to share with you guys. So throughout the episode, we talk about, of course, Yerba Mate and its many health benefits. I actually learn about some health benefits that I didn't previously know, but which apparently are quite powerful. We also talk about social entrepreneurship, business, life journeys and choosing your path, and much, much more. You guys will see that David shares his thoughts, very interesting thoughts, on how capitalism can be hacked, repurposed to create and amplify social good as part of your business model. And he also explains how he managed to build such an incredibly successful company from the ground up without going the traditional route, without selling out. It's a really fantastic episode. I just know you're going to get a ton out of it. And so I won't delay any further in presenting to you Mr. David Karr. Mr. David Karr, welcome to the show, my friend. It's so great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Jonathan.
Absolute pleasure. So, David, I've talked a lot about mate before. I've told my audience, I'm a big fan of it. I'm interested in hearing a little bit about yourself and how you came to be interested in yerba mate. Give us a little bit of background on you.
My path to mate was through an Argentine friend that I met at university in Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, California. I was having lunch at a restaurant one day and literally bumped into an Argentine who was a waiter, and he ended up spilling food on me by accident. We got talking, and he invited me out to his ranch where he was living on a trailer doing organic farming studies for the landowner there. And after we had a meal, he opened up by sharing a yerba mate gourd with me. And that was the beginning of the end.
Very, very cool. And so to fast forward, I mean, essentially you guys went on, I assume that was your co-founder, to start Guayaki, which is a really quite successful company. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about that journey, and also explain to me, I know you're one of the co-founders, what the heck is a Chief Cebador?
Well, there's a lot in that. So I'll start with the Cebador. A Cebador is the person who prepares and serves mate. And really, we reclassified all of ourselves as Cebadores not too long ago, a few years ago, as our company really got clearly aligned on what we're here to do and what we're here for, and as a practice and how we refer to each other and what we do. And so we're all Cebadores in Guayaki, and we're all here to support and serve and connect with each other, and then with all the different stakeholders that we work with. So as the Chief Cebador, I'm the Chief Brand Cebador. So specifically, I'm responsible for the brand, whereas someone else might be the Southwest Cebador, who's responsible for the activities that happens in the Southwest of the company, or the storytelling Cebador, who's responsible for our film projects, etc.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'm sure people want to know, especially if they've never been to South America, what exactly is mate? I mean, if they haven't heard me kind of go on and on and on about it before.
Yerba mate is an evergreen member of the holly family. It's essentially a tree. We spend a lot of time educating people specifically on the fact that it's its own category. It's not coffee. It's not tea. It's its own category. It's actually a rainforest tree that grows in the middle canopy of the subtropical Atlantic rainforest, which touches Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay. And it's been consumed for hundreds of years as a powerful rejuvenator. There's legends around its rejuvenation powers. It's been traditionally used by the indigenous peoples of the area, largely the Guarani, as a catalyst to enhance the healing powers of other herbs. In Paraguay, specifically, they use it as the base of their whole herbal medicine system. That was one of the things that really struck me when I first met Alex, and he was telling me about how they used mate traditionally. And he showed me this book that was at least like an inch and a half thick. It was dark green, and I remember it. It was in Spanish, like the uso medicinal de hierbas or plantas medicinales, something like the herbal use of plants. And at the very base of all the names in the Guarani language was the word ka'a, and ka'a means yerba. So even something like stevia, which a lot of people have heard of as a sweet herb, the way you pronounce the name stevia is ka'a'e. And so ka'a is the base of it. So when you go to the jujeres, who are the herbalists in Paraguay, they will prescribe you different herbs based on what's ailing you. And what you do is you take those yerbas and you put them in water and you steep them, and then you pour that herbal water, which is referred to as a remedy, through the mate, through the yerba. And that's how they self-medicate in the entire country of Paraguay to this day.
Wow, incredible. So talk to me about, I mean, you mentioned this first experience, you and Alex having mate. Talk to me about what you felt. What was so unique about this experience that it would go on and you would devote such a huge part of your career to it?
Well, there's a little bit of a backstory, which I know people usually appreciate hearing. And it was a bit of my personal journey, which kind of led to meeting Alex and what culminated in sort of my life's path. I was someone who ended up going to university and not totally sure what I wanted to do with my life, but I grew up with what I considered a fair amount of privilege. I grew up in Northern California, an incredible place on the planet. And I went off to university at Cal Poly and became very disillusioned with business in about my third year. And it was pretty obvious to me. I mean, I was sitting in finance class, and there was a very specific thing that happened to me. One day I heard my teacher, it was one of the teachers I really respected him. He was from England, and it was the day he was explaining that the gross domestic product, the GDP, had no social or environmental costs included in it. And I felt really sort of disheartened. And here I am going to business school, and I was idealistic. At the time, I was like 22, 20. No, I was not even that. I was like 20. And I just didn't feel like I could contribute to this anymore. And so I walked out of class that day, and I went to the foreign language department and said, I want to leave school. I want to leave my state. I want to leave this country. I need to get out of here. Where can I go? And they're like, well, we offer an exchange program to the south of France. And I said, okay, great. I'm going. So I signed up and I ended up taking off for a couple of years to go learn languages. I left everything. And that was really the time at which I got to know myself, away from my childhood and who I was and everything that I'd become, and really got to sort of redefine what was important to me. And upon coming back, I had really had a new appreciation for culture and community and food and just everything that I didn't really grow up with. It was a bit foreign to me. And so cut to that time when I met Alex in the restaurant, and he invited me over and he started telling me about this plant, which I'd never heard of, Yerba Mate. We're passing around a traditional mate gourd, and I'm literally feeling amazing drinking it. Now, this is where the next part of the story happens. I was someone who grew up being told I was allergic to everything green, and I had shots in my arms for over a decade as a young kid because I had extreme hay fever, and I spent a good portion of my life on pharmaceutical drugs, like Sudafed and Benadryl. And other things that they would just give you because that's what they did. And so I always just took them, and I felt kind of foggy and not the best. And I finally just gave up taking them because I just was like, this doesn't work. And really the only thing that ever made me feel really, really good and clear was extreme exercise. And so I was really into surfing and mountain biking and yoga. And that was the only time I ever got the clarity, except for when I drank that gourd with Alex. And all of a sudden my head got really clear. It felt like I just done that, and I had it, and all I was doing was drinking mate, and I could breathe again. And mind you, in the Central Coast of California, there's always something blooming. It's 300 plus days of sunshine a year. I was always dealing with hay fever, and every time I drank mate with Alex from that day forward, I just got relief. Maybe it wouldn't completely cure it or take it away, but I noticeably felt better. I could breathe. My congestion would go away. My head would clear up. And I was like, what is this stuff? How come I've never heard about it? I'm from California. We kind of hear of everything. And I was actually getting a minor in nutrition, and I was interested in how the body worked, and I'd still never heard of it. And so it kind of piqued my interest at that point in time. Like, how come there's this incredible plant which has the strength of coffee and the health benefits of tea and euphoria chocolate all wrapped up in one, and I've never even heard of it. No one's ever heard of it.
Right. So let me ask on that note. I mean, I knew a lot about the nootropic benefits, and I do want to get into that in a second, but I didn't actually know about all these other benefits. I mean, what causes mate to have this incredible effect on your health? Is it just antioxidants or nutrients, minerals, vitamins? What is it exactly?
Well, I'm no scientist or researcher, and of course, I've heard so many things over the last 2 decades. I mean, it does seem to hold true that it kind of cures what ails you in a way, or certainly helps you on your path. And for me, hay fever was a big thing, and I know it does a lot to strengthen your immune system. I've realized that myself traveling on the road for like the first 8 years of starting the business, that I never really got sick. And after a few years traveling, people started telling me that too. Like, people that were drinking mate wouldn't get sick. And they would specifically say, hey man, ever since I've been drinking this, like, I don't get those common colds that everyone else gets, and et cetera. And so, I know it's really good for your immune system. And I know with allergies, it's actually your immune system overreacting in a sense. And so maybe it brings my immune system into balance. And I know it has those corticosteroids in it too, which are in a lot of the medications that they use to treat, allergies. But it's kind of one of those things, like, if people are low energy, it brings their energy up. If they're high energy, it calms them down. People had stomach issues. One of the things I remember hearing in the very beginning was, I remember that the number 1 and number 2 reasons that people went to the doctor in the United States anyway was for cardiovascular and digestive related illness. And then I remember reading early on that mate's strongest healing effects were on the cardiovascular and digestive systems. So anything that deals with like flow and energy in a sense, which is very much digestion and cardiovascular and immune, lymph, etc.
Right. So that's really interesting, because I know, I'm always telling people, I geek out on this stuff. So, the whole deal that coffee has only one xanthine class chemical, which is caffeine. Yerba mate has 3. So caffeine, theobromine, theophylline, and is actually really powerful as a vasodilator. So I think that could also have a lot to do with blood flow, immune flow, movement of lymph, and just the idea that it can slow your heart rate, reduce stress, while also stimulating you, promoting alertness, I think is really, really interesting. Did we leave anything out in terms of health benefits?
Well, I think what you mentioned there is kind of a big one in terms of our society. I often described it as like a trimethylxanthine cocktail because the theophylline, and the caffeine and theobromine. What I've heard too is that they break down at different rates in your body. Mm-hmm. And so that the stimulation that comes from those xanthines is kind of spread out. And that's one part of it for sure. People like to stimulate themselves. But I think the biggest thing about mate compared to the other stimulants is that it nourishes while it stimulates rather than depletes while it stimulates.
Right.
So actually on a neurotransmitter level, all the amino acids, because it's super rich in amino acids, is going into your synapses and actually nourishing the very building blocks of the neurotransmitters, which are going into your synapses that are carrying your impulses through your brain. It nourishes rather than depletes while it stimulates. I think it's such a pivotal part of why people receive so much benefit from it.
Totally, I agree. And, I always like to say that coffee is kind of a one-note symphony as a nootropic. And I've definitely experienced that. Definitely on days that I need to sit and focus and get a lot of work done, mate is really effective. I have found that because it calms me down, it reduces my blood pressure. If I try and do a really, really intense workout immediately after drinking, I don't feel as awesome. But in terms of like that calm focus, it definitely helps me and kind of keeps me in the flow state.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the research. I mean, I'm sure you guys have found a lot of research or have been sent a lot of research. I mean, are people starting to catch on? Is modern science starting to catch on and realize how powerful this plant is? Or is it still really in its infancy stage, where say, well, I don't know. I mean, is it still in its infancy stage?
I think it's being discovered, and I think people are talking about it more and more. The thing is, we don't really invest in research, and we're also not really allowed to talk about the health benefits. It's too risky a territory for us to be in. We have to put disclaimers on all of our product anyway, and so it's really not the path we're taking. Really, we don't even do any traditional marketing, so it's all been word of mouth. People just experience mate and then share what it does for them. And there's all kinds of information online that talks about its health benefits and the sort of, things that it helps with. And I think people really end up talking about the things that work for them with their friends and people close to them. And we end up trusting that as much as anything else, especially with so much information out there. I mean, if you go online, there's a million things that are amazing for you. So really, I think people just share their experiences and the energy and enthusiasm carries.
It's really, really funny that you say that, actually, because I wrote a blog post about 1.5 years ago, because we interview some of the world's top experts every week on the show. And I'm a pretty avid self-experimenter as well. I've probably tried every legal and safe pill, potion, and cocktail that you can think of. And the blog post was called The 7 Supplements That Actually Make a Difference. And one of them was mate. Another one was magnesium, which pretty much everyone is deficient in. Vitamin C, really, really important. Water, really, really important. And mate was actually the only, I guess you could call it, nootropic or stimulant that I put on there. And a lot of people have actually reached out to me and exactly said this, like, I feel so much better. I don't have the digestive issues that I had with coffee, stuff like that.
Wow, I'd love to see it. Please send it to me.
Absolutely. I'll send it right on over. David, let me ask you this. I know mate is traditionally consumed through a bombilla or a filtering straw, and it's drunk out of a hollowed out gourd. I've got my bombilla right here with a coffee mug. So I wanted to ask, is there something to the method of administration? Is there a reason for doing this? Does it make a difference that traditionally you pour hot water over the same kind of mound of tea over and over and over again? Or do you find, that the medicine is very effective no matter how you drink it, even if it's in a tea bag that you dip in for 30 seconds?
That's a good question and a funny subject to talk about, because you definitely, if you're quick and on the go and you want to get the benefits, French pressing it is the quickest way and you get the hit. It's a bit quicker. I find I like sipping my gourd mostly because I sip it with a friend or someone that I'm sharing it with. And so much for me is that experience of reminding me of sharing with Alex or all the people I've shared a gourd. I love this ceremonial aspect. It is slower release, and you actually do have to drink the whole gourd through to get the same benefits, I would say, as if drinking it out of a French press. The other benefit, I think, to drinking it out of a gourd is I often put other herbs or specifically ginger in my hot water.
Right.
So as the ginger steeps, I have a really strong ginger brew, and that's probably the most common way that I drink it. And then as the mate gets weaker, the ginger brew gets stronger. I think with the gourd, oftentimes when people try it, it's so strong in the beginning that they find it too much. And it's actually hard for people to understand that the first round's really strong, the second round's not as strong, the third round's not as strong. So really you're just getting a lot of the stimulation and the bitters in the very beginning. And then as it brews, more of the sweet qualities come out of the leaf, and you actually start getting more and more of the trace minerals as you're drinking it. So it's more of an evolution. It's more of a slower ceremonial way to consume it. And I think in the end, if you drink the whole gourd through, like all 15, 20 pours from your thermos, then you'll end up getting the same benefits. But oftentimes people don't make that time for themselves. I often make sure I make that time for myself because I just love the ceremony of drinking it. And especially if I'm working at my desk for a couple hours in the morning, I like to be drinking my gourd and taking my shots little by little.
Right. And it's a really great way to stay super hydrated. Although I have to say, I really liked what you said because it reminded me of really how you and I got connected, which is Emily, your Chief Transformation Cebadora, and I really bonded at a summit. And I think a big part of that is I realized that she was carrying around a gourd, and I was like, oh my God, there's no mate on this boat. Like, can I hit some of that, you know? And we just sat there and like had a conversation and chatted and shared this gourd, and it was this really great bonding experience. So I definitely see the logic in what you're saying about how this is such an incredibly social beverage.
Exactly. And I think it's more occasion dependent too. Like at home, if someone needs to get out the door and they're going to French press it and take a mug with them, like great. But if you're actually going to sit down and have a meeting and visit with someone, it's so enjoyable to share a gourd, especially if you know that person well and you feel comfortable sharing the bombilla with them.
Totally. So, David, I want to change gears a little bit because I understand that you guys are not only a rapidly growing company, but also a very socially focused one. So, you know, I typically shy away or have shied away in the past from talking about entrepreneurship and business. And I think over the last year, I've really come to learn just how much our audience appreciates hearing from entrepreneurs like yourself and business leaders like yourself. So let me ask, tell us a little bit about the social good and restoration prospects and projects that Guayaki does and why it's so important to you. What are your thoughts around social entrepreneurship? You know, why is starting a business such an important way to give back to the community?
Well, I'll start by sharing our vision, which is that yerba mate culture will power our market-driven restoration business model to regenerate ecosystems and create vibrant communities. So in a sense, everything we're doing is to create vibrant communities. So we're thinking really big and really long term. And the crux of what's going to do that, the lever, is our market-driven restoration business model, which essentially is a way of describing our for-profit restoration model, which if you break that down even further, what we're trying to do, and the reason why I walked out of class that day a long time ago was because if you realize the public markets are always working to externalize all the costs out of the system, which means take them out and pass them on to the public. Social, environmental, cultural, et cetera. And so the vision we had was to redo the business paradigm essentially by internalizing those costs and keep trying to figure out ways to internalize the true cost of going business. So it's beyond being a double bottom line or a triple bottom line, and stop trying to like fragment how we're thinking about this. It's more of a holistic concept of basically trying to use business to create more good than bad if you're going to do it at all. And so in our sense, it's really quite a tangible model because we are reforesting the rainforest where we sustainably grow and harvest yerba mate. We're paying a fair wage to the indigenous groups and the small farmers we work with, and they're able to maintain their forest, which is an asset not only present day, but for their future generations. And the reason it all works and like the real crux of it all is providing three words, a stable annual income. to these people, because then they can plan for the future, just like you and I. As soon as someone moves into the place where they actually have a stable annual income, they can start planning for more than the next month or the next year. They can look out multiple years. And so the groups that we work with, we're able to plan way out and be like, look, you're going to be able to use this rainforest as an asset to generate renewable mate leaves every year. Now you can start looking at your schools and your gardens and your food systems and your community, and we'll work with them and, to have grower conferences, et cetera, to explore all the different ways of stewardship and community building to go from there. Because really, it's more about trickle up than trickle down.
Yes.
So you're starting with like the land, and you're starting with the people, and you're collaborating on trying to work together. And in the end, because mate is a rainforest tree, you end up getting a higher quality product, because 90% of the mate that ends up in the market is grown conventionally in the sun, commercially, for high production yields. And it's often more bitter. It doesn't have the same life force and vitality to it. Doesn't taste as good, but you get a lot more of it. And so that was why when we started out, we basically started out in like the small co-ops and natural food stores, where the foodies are people who are actually health conscious and thinking about what they put in their bodies. We're like, yeah, I want a product that comes from its natural environment, or it's wild harvested sustainably, or that doesn't have chemicals, or it's grown, in harmony with its environment by people who are treated well. And so we had to go into a real small nexus of stores to get started, but then the movement's really grown over the last 2 decades, and now we're ending up in like Chevrons and 7-Elevens, because people are actually looking for a healthy organic product that's fair trade certified to put in their body.
That's really awesome. And I have so much respect for having the purpose-driven company. I think it's something that's so lacking, and yet we're starting to see really some of the most successful companies, the companies like Patagonia, starting to really popularize this. And I think it's absolutely so important to spread this message that you don't have to be a nonprofit to do incredible social good. And in fact, that capitalism can be exercised as one of the most effective ways to do social good.
Yeah, I read one time that profitability is the soul of sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. So let me ask you this then, David, speaking on sustainability, do you have any insights that you'd like to share for anyone out there who wants to start a company? Any thoughts on what has made you successful as an entrepreneur, and what has also contributed to Guayaki's tremendous success?
Well, I would say I've been successful because I've been really able to build a team and surround myself with like-minded, philosophically aligned people who also were able to put their egos aside and really wanted to create a new paradigm business model, because the original 5 of us who are together, we're still all together. We're having more fun than ever because there's more momentum, and we're able to really realize a lot of the visions and dreams we've had now because there's more resource and more bandwidth. And, I'd say that building a team and getting aligned has been really important. And then, of course, you have to be all in, committed and passionate to make it happen at all costs. In my case, I bought a VW bus early on because I heard that according to California bankruptcy laws, if you go bankrupt, they wouldn't take your car. And I was like, great, I'll live in my VW. And, I lived on the road for 8 years. I don't think a lot of people are necessarily willing to go to that length, but you kind of have to be able to go as hard as you can and go all in and be prepared to live on basically nothing, and we didn't really take a salary for the first 7-8 years.
Wow.
But just lived on expenses, like traveling around in vehicles and expensing our life, like eating food.
Oh my God. How long did it take before you guys really got the company off the ground?
It took us 15 years to really reach profitability. And that was mostly, I know it sounds like a long time, but in a sense, we were building a category. Mm-hmm. We were building a brand at the same time. So it's a lot to do both. It wasn't like we were jumping into a category that was already established and we were like a number 2 or number 3 player. We were building the category and building the brand and building a whole new business model, which we call market-driven restoration, which we are still doing. And the whole goal was to basically prove that you could make peace profitable and have a for-profit restoration business. So to prove that you can create a for-profit restoration business, took a lot of heavy lifting. And also, we never committed to an exit strategy when we raised money, which also made it a very select few people that were interested in kind of jumping on board. And so our goal was to never sell the company and to basically be stewards of this new model. We never really believed that anyone else would be really willing to stick it out like we would. And so it just took a lot of time.
Wow, incredible. I mean, it's hard enough to raise money when you tell investors that you want to give back, give a portion of proceeds to restoration, charitable, social good, but to not have an exit strategy as well makes it, I mean, I can say I sit on the board of 2 food companies. It's hard. So respect to you guys. Incredible.
And even you just understanding like the position you're in and just reiterating it right there. It's actually, that's the hardest part for people to get. And the way you phrased it's actually not accurate, because that's kind of the crux of what we're doing. It's not about giving back a percentage of our proceeds. That's the model. That's the paradigm we're trying to get away from. It's like you make a lot of money in life and then you give it back when you're older, but it's okay how you destroy the planet or do whatever you do, making your money. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me and to our thinking. The whole idea is internalizing the costs into your business model as you do it. Right. So we're building in the costs of paying a fair wage, of restoring forests, of doing all the things that we're trying to do into the purchase price so that when you go and buy the product at the store, all that stuff's been built into it. Mm-hmm. So we've built in our own problems with scale. So the whole idea is the more we scale, the more good we can do. And it's not about giving back in the future or some percentage of our profits or anything about that. It's every time a purchase is made, it's driving a new paradigm, a new model.
Incredible. Yeah. Sorry about that misphrase there.
No, it's important to bring up just because that's how people think about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's how most things are done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like this idea of engineering the sustainability of the good that you guys are doing. It reminds me a lot of a lecture I heard from Jean-Paul Dejorier, who in building Patron spirits wanted to do the same thing. So all the glass is sourced sustainably, giving people who don't have work jobs, basically finding and recycling glass. So it's all recycled glass from the streets of Mexico City. And obviously all the agave is farmed sustainably and is kind of replenishing the supply. Very, very cool. So David, let me ask you this. Shifting kind of into more the superhuman part of the interview, I want to understand just a little bit about you and how you make sure you perform at your best. I know we talked about mate as a supplement that's keeping you at peak performance. Are there any other kind of skills, habits, or routines that you feel make you perform at a higher level?
Well, I'm always trying to figure those ones out.
Yep.
But essentially, I always try to stay active and make sure that I live a balanced life. And I, of course, really focused on basically what I eat. But other than that, I just try to breathe as much as possible.
Awesome. And where are you based? Are you still in Northern California?
Yeah, I live on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. It's one of the Gulf Islands, kind of off the coast of Vancouver.
Ah, very, very cool. So lots of sun and lots of outdoors.
Yeah, it's a mecca.
Incredible. David, can you share with me one major challenge you're facing right now, personal or professional, why it's particularly vexing and how you're planning to overcome it? If that's not too personal, of course.
Yeah, I know it sounds maybe kind of ridiculous, but I don't really have a major challenge facing me right now, personal or professional. There's just all a bunch of little things, but I can't even come up with an example. I would say that if I really had to stretch, the challenge is just always educating people on exactly what we just talked about, how to really reconceptualize the way we think about business and people and how we interact with each other and financing models and consciousness, et cetera. It's really a paradigm shift, I think is the part that's really how to communicate what we're doing as a brand and connect with people would probably be the ongoing challenge.
Well, that's fantastic. And I hope we can make a small dent in that by sharing this episode, with a few thousand, 10,000, couple thousand people. David, I want to ask you, you mentioned a book earlier on that touched you. What are a few books that have changed your life? Wow.
I think when I was studying abroad, I remember reading The Little Prince, and that was pretty impactful on me. Mostly because I really liked the simplicity of the story, but also because I ended up learning several languages with it, because once I learned it in one language, I kind of knew the words so well that I could read it like 50 times in French, and then I would know French or Spanish or German. And so
Cool.
that was particularly memorable because I used to just listen to it. I remember liking The Alchemista as well. And
Great book.
the Power of Now. I remember reading that like 20 years ago and
Love that one.
connecting with that one. The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, I think I remember. It's mostly books that I read early on. And then, of course, there's all kinds of books I read in the last couple decades, biographies or business books, which I've thought have been interesting, but haven't really changed my life. More just kind of confirmation or whatever.
Yeah, I've had that experience as well where like someone will recommend a book to me, and because I read it after reading something like The Power of Now or Rich Dad Poor Dad or all these other books, it's like, yeah, evolutionary, not revolutionary. I think it really comes down to like what's the order in which you read the book and find that message, because there are really some age-old messages that bear repeating in nearly every kind of top quality business book you'll read, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. So David, just to kind of wrap us up a little bit, we really love to assign homework on the Becoming Superhuman podcast. So I know the obvious homework is to have people try some mate, but is there any other homework, or would you want to clarify that piece of homework that you'd like to assign for our listeners, something for them to do to act on what they've learned today before next week's episode?
Well, I think it's on all of us to really every day to get in touch with those things that help us come to life, that really activate that place of passion and vitality in us. And if we're not finding that place, I think the homework is to go find that place and to get the spirit fired up.
Awesome. I think that's really, really fantastic homework. I would also toss in, if anyone out there hasn't tried mate, personally, I would recommend that they do, sub it out for their coffee one morning. I certainly swear by it and use it on a very regular basis.
Yeah, it's good to give it a fair shot. Like try it for a few days. I think most people who try mate for like 3 to 5 days and substitute it out for something else will find that they just feel better. They might not love the way it tastes compared to their coffee, because coffee has oils and it's rich and it tastes good. And I always recommend people to use coffee more as that decadent beverage and as a treat, rather than sort of as a daily, mate is more of a daily healthful ritual. And so I think giving it one day on or off might not make the biggest impact, but if you try it for a series of days, I think you'll really discover the health benefits and the vitality you get from it.
Very cool. And I have to admit, I've actually heard of people doing the whole bulletproof thing with mate to get that rich flavor. So blending it with MCT oil, unsalted butter. I've tried it once. It wasn't phenomenal, but it does give you that kind of rich flavor that you might miss a little bit.
I think my favorite is to mix in maple syrup and some milk or cream and have a mate latte if I'm going to have that kind of rich beverage. Otherwise, I like just drinking it dark green.
Yeah, I like it really dark green, and I like that kind of like smoky flavor as well. I find it to be kind of really relaxing. So, David, where can people learn more and get in touch with you if they want to hear more? Check out, obviously, Guayaki.
Yeah, well, guayaki.com is a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as I know, people can purchase a lot of your products on Amazon. So we'll give people links. I'll kind of curate some of my favorite ones that I've tried over the years. If people want to check that out on the blog post. David, I want to ask you our closing question, which is this. If people take away just one message from this entire episode and they carry that message with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
That's funny that you asked that. Well, it was actually a quote that I put above my desk 20 years ago when I started Guayaki, which kind of was one of those things when I read it, I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I'm feeling. And it kind of took the weight that I was feeling on my shoulders as a young person, 25 at the time, and felt like there was so much to do and I was responsible. And I read it and it was, that's that famous quote, don't ask yourself what the world needs, do what makes you come alive, because what the world needs are people who come alive.
Incredible. I love that. And is that why Guayaki's slogan ended up being Come Alive?
Come to life? Yeah. It's funny that you should say that. It took us about 18 years to get back to it, but we had about another 22 slogans in between there. But yeah, come to life stuck.
Amazing. David Karr, I really want to thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure connecting with you. I've enjoyed your guys' products so much, and I hope listeners out there will check you guys out for the important work that you're doing. So thanks again.
You got it. My pleasure.
Take care, David.
Bye-bye.
All right, super friends, that's it for this week's episode. We hope you really, really enjoyed it and learned a ton of applicable stuff that can help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If so, please do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or however you found this podcast. In addition to that, we are always looking for great guest posts on the blog or awesome guests right here on the podcast. So if you know somebody or you are somebody or you have thought of somebody who would be a great fit for the show or for our blog, please reach out to us either on Twitter or by email. Our email is info@becomingasuperhuman.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.